Good afternoon, everybody. Bonjour, mesdames et messieurs. Bienvenue. Comme je disais cet matin, approchez-vous, si vous voulez. Please feel free to move a little closer and we can be a little bit more intimate. So before we bring our illustrious panelists up onto the stage, I'm going to give you a short presentation on the design, development and construction phase, but in order for me to scroll through the slides, I'll need something to do that with. Thank you. So apart from me, we'll have Paul Ziegler from Online Business Communications, who will be talking about the IT side of things in the design, development and construction phase. We'll have Christian Cox from Residor, who worked on this hotel and has a few stories to tell us. And then we have Serkan Buludajitan, if I pronounced that correctly, who will talk to us about a couple of their projects, I think, Sheraton in Bamako and also in Conakry. Okay, the technology is working. So West Africa on the rise. As you can see from the screen, West Africa is doing well relative to the rest of Africa and to the global economy in general. The population is growing. We have increased urbanization that's becoming faster and faster. We have social change. There's a growing middle class. Better connectivity all the time. It's just getting better and better. It may not feel like it sometimes, but it is, certainly. We have much increased intra-African travel. So with the rise of airlines like Askai and various others, it's now easier to get around our region. This is all leading to increased growth opportunities. When you take a look at, in a little bit more detail, we're using our colleague Trevor Ward's information here. So they're targeting these cities to watch. We have Dakar, we have Abidjan, Accra and Lagos. Of course, they're only the headline acts. And according to his information, 64,000 rooms to come in 2016. Now, whether or not they will all actually be built is a different question, but the point is it's pointing towards growth on quite an unprecedented scale. So to repeat what was said on the previous panel to some extent and what we talked about this morning, international and regional operators. You can see a whole bunch of them there. Those are the names, the usual suspects. We've got a mix of the big international operators and the more locally focused operators like Mangalis or Protea. Why would you choose one over the other? Well, we won't go into too much detail. They've already made their sales pitch, but international operators and other branded operators do bring with them a reputation, a brand. They have efficient management structures. They have a certain level of quality that guests will expect and will be pleased to get when they arrive. They bring training for the staff, front of house and back of house. So all in all, they bring a recognized image with their brand. So who do you need on your project team? Well, obviously you need architects and interior designers. That's what we are, so that's what I'm going to sell to you this afternoon. But you need a lead consultant. I think it's something we haven't actually mentioned so far. Someone who's conducting the orchestra, someone with whom the client, you guys, the developers, can interact and be a point of contact with. So you need a project manager. We talked about the importance of that person this morning. Obviously the contractor, the architect, the interior designer. Those are the main ones, but then you've got, and the operator, of course. Then there's a whole string of other consultants which many developers don't appreciate that they need. So on the row underneath on that slide, you've got a landscape designer, lighting, technology and communications. Paul will be telling us about that in a minute. Security consultant. These consultants are in more and more demand across the world, but particularly in this region. And even vertical circulation. If you've got a big box, you need to make sure your lifts are working and that you can get your housekeeping stuff upstairs and your rubbish out. So the stages of development, once you've got your consultants team in place and we're working, we'd start with getting the brief. The brief is arguably the most important part of the project. We need to get a brief from the client, we need to get a brief from the operator, and as consultants, it's our job to bring these two needs together, so the operator's requirements and the developer's vision. Once we've got that brief and we then set about planning the hotel, so we decide where all these tables and chairs are going to go in the restaurants, we decide what the guest rooms are going to look like, which leads us on to the second phase. Having done the planning and an initial budget to go with that planning, we then take a look at the look and feel of the place. So what's the carpet on the floor? What's the ceiling going to be made out of? What are the various materials? Once we've decided that, we present the owner with pretty pictures, computer visuals that look like the real thing, and you can get a very good idea of what your hotel is going to look like. You can also use it for marketing purposes. You can use it with your financial backers to show them that this is what they're going to get for their money. So once that's been agreed by all the parties, so that's the owner, the operator, and anybody else with a vested interest, we'll move on to the documentation. That's when we do all our drawings and specifications, when we will make detailed specifications for all the furniture and finishes and the architectural detailing in your hotel. We issue that to the client's project manager, who then finds a contractor, appoints the contractor, and the whole thing moves on site. That's when it gets interesting, because things can often change on site, particularly if it's a renovation, like in this hotel. You're never really sure of what you're going to find once you start ripping out the old and putting in the new. And the site process can take a long time, depending on what hurdles you've had to overcome to get there. So we're probably all familiar with some of the problems that you get in this region. And it's not just this region, it's all around the world. But in particular here, you have the political climate in the country where you're operating. Infrastructure is a huge problem in many countries. As Kalyan said yesterday, they had to fly things in to get into this project, which is very, very expensive. You can't just put things on a truck and send it in from wherever you're importing from. Health issues, or more particularly disease. On our project in Sierra Leone, of course, we were interrupted by the tragedy of Ebola. Work carried on, but at a much reduced pace, of course. The financial setup is very important. Often projects will start, but they're underfunded. And then this will cause a pause, if not sometimes a complete stop, for a year or two, while more money is found. I've also written up there lack of resources. This can apply to what's available locally, what skills are available. It's all very well having your fancy team of international architects and designers, but if we design something that can't be built on site, it's a problem. So we need to design according to the skills that are available locally, and try and push those standards up wherever we can. We, for example, try and take interns into our studio in London from wherever our projects are based. What else have we got up there? We've got bureaucratic problems, of course, which leads on from the political. Civil servants in many developing countries want to delay decisions, and paperwork is increasing. It's even a problem to get into the airport if you've got people coming in and have to go through the kind of visa procedure that we had to go through to get into Lomé. It doesn't make life easy. The social and the cultural conditions in the country, what's acceptable, what isn't. Are there religious reasons why people stop work at a certain time? The environment, of course, and then conflict, not last but least, or even not least but last. There are problems in many countries in our region. One of the hurdles, of course, is to find out who your target market is. There's some images here on the screen of our project in Sierra Leone, the Cape Sierra Hilton. I'm looking for the developer, but I can't see him. If you're here, Keith, put your hand up. No? That's all right, I'll still say nice things. This was a very tricky project, as I said, not least because of Ebola. But the way we got over these things was we identified who the guest is going to be. This is an unusual project because it's part resort and part urban business hotel, given its location in Freetown. We had a focus group with Sierra Leonean expats living in London who were able to give us a lot of information about the social and the cultural context in which the hotel was going to be built and in which it would operate. Of course, we had the operator, Hilton, with their brand standards as well as their brand values. And they were the guardians of what they considered to be the important aspects of the hotel's design. We also produced, which we do for every project, a design narrative, which is a short document which will illustrate where we see the properties, the context of the property, how it reflects the brand's values in general and how it reflects the social and cultural image of its location in particular. Again, I mentioned skills, resources, and logistics. How do you get stuff into the country? It's not easy, Sierra Leone, but a lot of it can come by ship and some of it has to be flown in. I'm sure Christian will have some points to make on that. And lastly, of course, I can't hammer it too much, is the consultants team. You need a consultants team that have done this before. So how do you work out your target market? Well, what's the kind of room rate you think you can earn where you want to open your hotel? Is it $50 a night, $100 a night, or $500 a night? Obviously, we all want the $500 a night one. That's going to tell you where, what level you should be pitching your brand at. Who's coming? We said guest profile. So is it white European businessmen, or is it intra-African travelers who have different desires and different needs? Are they coming on business, or are they coming for the weekend? Or hopefully you can get them to do both and do their business during the week and then stay for the weekend. That will then lead you to picking a brand. In this case, it was Hilton, but whether it's Radisson or whether it's 4 Points or whether it's a Mangalis, all of these decisions can be made. So that's the background to the panel that we want to have today, and I'd like to welcome the panelists up onto the stage, please, gentlemen. Serkan, Christian, and Paul. Come on up, don't be shy. Take your pick. Samash? Yes, it's working. Well, welcome. Thank you for joining me. I don't know what you thought of the introduction. We've had some discussion of this already. It might be interesting to talk about particular projects and how your disciplines were affected by them. Paul, I know you've got some stories about Angola.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Just wanted to share with you some experience from our side. We are a leading business communication solutions provider, providing connectivity solutions, in particular also to the hospitality industry and other industries in Africa and the Middle East. I'd just like to share an experience with you in terms of what we went through on a project we're currently working on in Angola. It's a larger scale project. And the challenges that we face there is one particular point is in terms of the management or the project management side, which was mentioned earlier as being one of the critical elements of that, and who should take responsibility of that element. In the project that we were currently are developing and working on, we got to the point where we were, say, established our communications facilities and everything else, but then in the end there was no power to the facility. So it ended up being that we, as the telecommunications solutions provider, had to go out and then, say, source power to be able to start, say, testing the operation at the hotel. So that's just, I'd say, well, for us, a significant impact on the project that we were working on, but it's small elements of that where, say, project management is missing and has a great impact on the overall rollout of the project.
Paul, these are not problems that are strictly limited to that particular project. You'll get the same thing on projects that you've worked on, right? Did you get blamed for that lack of power?
Well, it was, let's say, pushed to us, but then we were able to say, good, as part of the agreements that we had signed with the, let's say, with the hotel operator and also with the hotel owner, that it was kind of out of our scope, and it was clear from, let's say, the scope of work that we put in place that we clearly specified that we needed power in order to be able to operate the communications portfolio.
So even if it's not your fault, it's still your problem. You've got to deal with it, right?
Yeah, well, I think from a communications perspective, the problem is if there's no connectivity, then they always come running after the connectivity provider. But they don't go down to the source of where the problem really is, which was power.
Christian, I know you had a very similar problem here, right?
Good afternoon.
Press the button.
Good afternoon. Hello. I do. I have a great experience of majority of the potential failures of a project happened right here. A large number of the ones that you mentioned earlier on. And I think one of the key points to it is to keep on planning. You have to take a view every step of the way and making sure that the direction of the project, how you're procuring the project, and how you're actually managing a project, and you have to be very flexible.
But how did you get your power, or was it the IT incoming from kilometers of cable?
Yeah, kilometers of cable. One of the things as an operator you don't typically do is do major infrastructure works for a country, but obviously part of the essential IT component here, we had to bring in fiber optics 4 or 5 kilometers long from Ghana, bringing it into the country, new revolutionary ideas. Again, something you don't always plan for, but it's something you have to adapt to and overcome as you move forward. And many other challenges that we've seen with power supplies, power issues, unstable utility networks. We pretty much approached every one of those challenges in isolation, and we've had to overcome them. Unfortunately, it has financial implications plus time, and you have to take a logical review on it.
But without a degree of trust from the owner, in this case, Kalyan, it would be difficult to complete such a project. Right?
Absolutely. I mean, we work very close with the owners. Kalyan been a great asset to the hotel that we're working and living in right now. Without their open-mindedness and trust on the operator, I don't think we would have managed to achieve what we've achieved in such a short space of time. I think one of the keys moving forward is more due diligence within the current country. and moving forward in the next 6 to 12 months, what's going to happen in the area. One of the eventual challenges for us is the new developments that are coming into the country has a negative impact on your supply chain. So we lost utilities, unstable environment because people were also building. And that's where we had to overcome the challenges at a later time. So again, it's replanning, thinking each step of the way.
Serkan, I know you worked on this project. You helped the owners and the operator to get it finished and open and ready. You also mentioned trust earlier, that you think it's an essential ingredient. How did that work when you were, one of your projects is the Sheraton in Bamako. Of course, there was a security issue there, another hurdle to overcome. How was your relationship with the developer? How did that help or hinder the project?
Actually, we are, for the last 4 years, we are active in the West French-speaking African countries. And in each project, we are learning and we are transferring whatever we learned to our new projects. Actually, the client is very important. Your client is very important, how he reacts to and how he is familiar to hospitality business, because as Kinza, we are pretty much interested on the hospitality sector. And you highlighted most of the challenges in your presentation also. For example, right after this terrorist attack, you should be very flexible. Right after the day, we were there for the Radisson Blu, and we got the hotel open in 15 days. And the other projects that we do with the same client is Sheraton Bamako. This is the most important thing is the planning. I mean, as this is a turnkey project for us, what we understood...
sorry, just to clarify, you operate generally on a design and build basis.
We prefer. I mean, the project that we are in doing Conakry...
So I don't really want to talk to you then, do I? Because I'm a designer.
When you do design and build, you do your own planning, and so the things are getting more easier. But in each country, they have their own challenges. For example, in Bamako, what we are challenging now, the logistics, because it's an inland country, although our goods has to be there in 30 days, but we are facing some 60 days, some delays in the port, and there are some issues like strike on the railway, and besides there's a security issue. But again, if you plan everything, because sometimes even a very small issue, small material can stuck the old site. The most important thing is the planning and the infrastructure. For example, now we are doing a 200-key Sheraton hotel, and there will be issue maybe for the power supply, or as for the fiber optic, for the IT, because. And another issue is the local adaptation of the standards. For example, these countries are French-speaking countries, and their standards are pretty much more related with the French norms. But when you work with a hotel operator, you have American standards like NFPA, so it is...
But wouldn't you guys typically say, well, we'll work to the best international standards?
Yeah, I mean, for Rizador's perspective, in the last 12 months, we've recognized the variation of standards throughout Africa. And we've actually regionalized our design standards to cater for that. They are still at the international level standards, and we normally follow the North American or British standards. But we've noticed that we can't always do that. So we have to do our own due diligence on the standards, and then we do an underwriting on certain elements that need to be achieved. And that also is a costly exercise to do from the owner's and a developer's perspective, that to reach a certain design standard from an international perspective, and then having to duplicate certain things just to go to local code. So it's a very important thing. So we try as utmost to work with the regionalized standards, and I think successfully we've done that especially in the last 12 months, and we've opened in a variety of different countries, more so in West Africa, and it's a lot easier to get our building sign-offs as well. So.
Okay, thanks. Coming back to Serkan's point about design and build, I'm joking, of course, when I say that I don't want to talk to him. I do. We can, you will use external designers or architects as and when necessary. You will hire in your IT consultant as and when necessary. The difference is in the form of contract that the client is signing with the contractor. Am I right? Yeah.
Correct. I mean...
and there are pros and cons to a design and build contract and a more traditional procurement method, right?
We tried this one in 2 projects. One project was in Abidjan, and we were fit-out contractor, and the design has been done by different disciplines. So what we see the difference when you do the design and build, you can control everything, like you can choose your own consultants, like you mentioned in your presentation, like kitchen and laundry, security, logistic, transportation, acoustic. So everything is in-house. So you control everything. It looks like the client, the investors are split everything, but when you combine everything, it looks like more expensive than the turnkey contract. But as in the previous panel it was mentioned, most of the projects are delaying in Africa. So in order to shorten the time and to stay in the budget, because the investor is clear in his mind that he knows what he is going to pay, and also it will be fixed, and in terms of the contract, he will be more confident, then there will be no much surprise in the end. So
well,
that's why...
It works for the contractor, clearly, as you said.
I say from my point of view.
But from the operators and from an external consultant's point of view, do you find that there's a conflict of interest if the other consultants have all had their contracts novated to the main contractor? Has that been your experience, Paul?
I'll say we haven't had that experience in the past. What tends to happen on our side is that we're normally contracted by the owner or the developer, and have worked through the projects along those lines.
Christian?
I would say very much so. I think for me, once you give the whole rights away from into a turnkey management package, their protection levels of what you're actually procuring all disappears. I think the key of it is you have to keep on board a design element, a design team and a site management team to coordinate and sign off. Because one of the problems we've experienced in the past is the D&B contractor is obviously their margins. They've got their margins, and the way they earn their profit is by value engineering. And without having a safety net of a consultants team on board, you are at risk of losing the quality that you set out to do. I'm not saying all D&B contractors are the same.
Well, Serkan's got something. He's dying to say something. What's your response to that?
I mean, as I said in the beginning, it's what you do, and you are doing everything with even the turnkey contracting with the hotel operator. You get everything signed off, and in terms of MAP, interior designers, or facade and everything. So the pre-development stage is very important. Maybe you lose some time, like 6 months or 1 year, depending on the size of the project. But at the end of the day, when everything is signed off, and you have a clear documents and you have a clear design, so the rest of the thing, when we go to the site, it is our contractor's responsibility and to deliver the hotel on time and with the quality of the required by the hotel operator.
That sounds like our experience on the Cape Sierra Hilton, where the design team was kept on contract direct to the developer up until the 95% of the design was done, when their contracts were then novated over to the D&B contractor. It seems to me that the key to success is having an experienced contractor. You all agree?
Totally.
All right, so moving on. We've assumed that we've got a nice design. It's been done. It's been approved. The consultants team have done their job and handed it over to the client's project manager. We have technical services from the operator, keeping an eye on things. What happens when things go wrong? When you get one of the hurdles that we talked about in Sierra Leone, of course, it was Ebola, but it can equally be a security concern. How do you keep the project moving? You've got consultants who have all got to earn a living. You've got a contractor who has a team on site who's got to pay salaries. What was your experience here, Christian? Or did it all go really smoothly?
It was perfect. Yeah. I think if you look at the challenge of what happened here, we on change of contractor and also procurement issues. I think the key is to plan it accordingly. These things sometimes jump up on you, but a lot of the time, a lot of these issues you know about, and you can start planning early on it. But I think being completely open between the whole design teams, contractors, and the owners and the operators to make sure that you're all discussing in each of the components what can be done, what can be changed to make sure that we can achieve that. And one of the key points here are relationships with Kalyan Group. We were always in communication, and that was
so we're back to that trust factor again.
Yeah, right? Absolutely. And we found solutions. Unfortunately, these solutions are not always free. You have to spend money to make money. And one of the key factors for us was, if we say we've spoken about procurement and air freighting, bad package management early stages costs us a lot of extra money at a later stage because procurement wasn't aligned. Materials that were due to be on site never come. And from a contractor's point of view, if you've got something that's missing, it stops the job. So that's the key, and we need to make sure that you're constantly communicating with the contractor, ensuring, and from a PM's perspective, I would always insist that there's a full review done on all the procurement measures by the PM team.
Talking about procurement, Paul, your area of expertise, the products and services you're offering, are by their nature high-tech, let's call them, correct, and expensive and fragile, a lot of this equipment. Do you handle the procurement yourself for these items? Is it part of your services? That's one question. And the other question is, what about before the hotel opens? Do you provide IT services for the on-site team?
Okay, in terms of the procurement side, as part of our service offering, we do provide, let's say, the full turnkey package in terms of, let's say, all the equipment. And what we tend to do is we tend to, let's say, what we call stage the equipment outside or off-site. So that's normally back in, we operate out of Germany. So we would stage all the equipment in Germany, so prep it. And then when it's ready to go and when it is ready to be required, then we would either put it on a plane or on a ship, depending on the requirement. Because one of the challenges that we also faced, going back to the Angola project, is we had very high-end equipment, and we were shipping containers into Angola. The problem is it gets to Angola, sits in the port for a month, and then after that, it is then transferred over to the owner. But we, at that point in time, have no control over what happens with that equipment. But at the end of the day, we've got $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 of equipment that we've sent out there. So in terms of then the logistics behind that is that we say ship smaller amounts out. It is a bit more expensive, but at the end of the day, we, as the service provider, are still in full control of let's say, the project and the equipment. Coming back then to the second point that you mentioned with regards to providing services so prior to, let's say, the facility or the operation going into service, we are in a position to provide services, and a lot of that is done because, say, during a development phase, the sites are not yet connected to the fiber network or have wireless access. So what we tend to do is then to drop a 1.2 or a 2.4 meter antenna, so the size of a TV antenna, larger TV antenna, on top of the hotel roof, and then from there we can then build, let's say, a network that allows then the on-site teams that are working on the property to take advantage of being able to
I'm
connect.
thinking particularly of the contractor who's on site and will need to communicate with the overseas consultants, with their home base, in this case, in Turkey. And how did you manage that on these Bamako projects, for example?
We have a project team in Turkey who are responsible from the procurement, design, and logistics. And we are using an SAP system that all sites are connected to each other with...
What does that mean?
I mean, we have a special software, so all sites are in the same time are aware of...
If you don't have an internet connection, how does that work?
We come over with that one. I mean, by dial-up or some from phone.
But it is an essential part of
it is a big challenge, but at least during the night time they are downloading everything. So all sites know what is procured, where is the material right now, or what is the design stage. And they
can your clients, if they're the developers, can they see at any time where these things are, whether they're on the ship coming over or stuck in customs?
We are in relation with them, and if you can give them access from that software, they can reach. That's what we do also.
So it's an open and accessible system.
Accessible system, but you can put restriction, and you can open whatever they can.
It's
they
transparent,
are allowed.
let's say.
Yes.
Okay. And Christian, talking about this hotel, you've obviously learned a lot of lessons from this particular project. And how will do you conduct a kind of review at the end of the process about lessons learned?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the key components of completion of every project, doesn't matter how big or small it is to do a lessons learned discussion, follow-up with all the consultants and contractors on site. The chances are you'll experience them time and time again, but understanding how to identify these points before they happen, use the lessons learned for that. Absolutely. It's the key component of any completion.
And what about Paul? How do you finish off your projects?
Well, good. At the end of the day, when, say, a project is handed over, one to the operator, and then, to the, say, the owner, the developer, and then when the operator is on board, the final handover takes place at that point in time, and then all the necessary tests and, say, handover documents are done, and we internally then also run through what we call potentially post-mortem in terms of, what went well, what didn't go that well, and then what can we improve in terms of that. The challenge is in Africa, it's not as easy to be able to say what you've done in Angola is going to work in Sierra Leone or in Chad or in Niger, because every country is different. So one can learn, I'd say, in terms of the basics, findings that one has, but then one still needs to take into account the local market's specific dynamics.
Okay, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, you have 3 experts in their fields on the panel here. I'm sorry, 4 experts. Feel free to ask some questions if there are any developers out here who are wondering about how the process works once you get on site. In the meantime, Serkan, I'd like you to maybe sum up your approach to working in this region. What are the key half a dozen points that you always look for in a project?
You mean the challenges that we are facing?
The challenges that you might identify and how you overcome them.
After you plan everything, I mean, the challenges you highlighted in your presentation, but you have to, every time you have to be your B plan. I mean,
right.
You have to, because we were not expecting Ebola, and during Ebola time we continue working, but we took the necessary precautions. It was a hard time for us. But we continue working.
But does that mean you have to send part of your workforce home?
No, we have never sent back. They stay working, but we keep the precautions on site and together with the client. Of course, the project slowed down, but even we are the fit-out contractor there. Even the MAP or the facade or fit-out contractor as Kinza, we didn't leave the site. But the things shall move faster, but it slowed down. And in Bamako, after this terrorist attack, and we were in a stage of doing the mobilization of our site. We act according to the, we consult with our security consultant. We took the necessary precautions. We are learning also. I mean, as Paul said, Africa is different, and we have been working here for the last 4 years.
And every country is different,
yes,
right?
Every country has different nature.
We often talk about Africa, but it's actually 54 countries. I forget what it is.
In end of 90s, we were working mostly in Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Azerbaijan. We had faced similar challenges. So we are flexible, and we are estimating at least what is going to be the challenge for us. So if you make your plan in advance, and if you have every time a B plan, so things you can react, and as you have to be flexible also. That's the key point.
Christian, what would you say? What are the key points for our budding developers to look out for?
From operations or operators' perspective, I think we have a duty of care from a technical point of view when we come into a country, and we have to do our own due diligence. I mean, there's typically for 2 years, 3 years prior to the first person from the operations team on the ground, we've been in the country, we've been working with the owners, we understand what we've experienced the country for the good or the bad. And I think for us, we plan to bring potentially 300 people into a building before the hotel's finished. We need to make sure there's food, access to food, clean water, facilities, beds, transportation networks, visa issues. So for me, it's always keeping on top of that. Secondly, one of the important things that we always forget, or typically always forget, is pre-opening the team, extension of the prelims from the contractor. Where do we place staff? What IT equipment do they have? Can they make telephone calls? That's from my point of view, it's 9 times out of 10. That's always the thing that's forgotten.
Yeah, isn't it always a problem if you've got the contractor still on site?
Exactly.
And your guys are coming in to try and get the restaurant ready, while Paul's guys are still fixing the routers and all the rest of it.
It is absolutely. And I think if you look at it from a non-construction point of view, to bring a operations GM and their team onto a construction site in a strange country, which is stressful enough. I think one of the beauties of working, especially with Kinza, the amalgamation of the teamwork, working together, understanding of the stresses of an operations team and not just writing them off. And that's the beauty of a good contractor. They actually understand that.
And Paul, you'll be coming back, I assume, once the hotel is open to check that everything's working correctly.
Correct. Well, so from our side, what we do is once, say, the operation is, well, say, all the connectivity and everything is up and running, is we hand it then over to the operator / developer or owner of the hotel, and then what we look at doing is always then establishing a field support staff in country, so training local staff in country that can then take on the responsibility if something does go wrong, that they can be on site within a specific or specified time frame to take care of the property.
Yeah, speaking from our point of view as architects and designers, of course our role diminishes as the project comes closer and closer to completion, but we always send a team to take a look at the property afterwards to see what lessons can be learned. The most useful thing is to finally sit at the bar and have a beer and ask the barman or bar staff if it works. What are the problems behind there? Is the floor finish correct? Is the height of the bar right? That kind of thing. So, ladies and gentlemen, if there are any questions, now is the time to stick your hand up. And if not, I'll just summarize by saying I hope we've given some clear and concrete examples of the reasons why you need experienced teams to get your hotel open. I think that's very clear from what you've all been saying. So if no questions, that's all of it from us. Just remains for me to thank Paul, Christian and Serkan, and I hope you thank them too. Thank you.